Hello, everyone. We'll get started now. Just a reminder, since this is the first time you're seeing me up here teaching, my name is Miriam. But yeah, welcome to today's lecture. We're going to be talking about lists and dictionaries today. So just a reminder, these lectures are recorded, so if you need to reference them back at any point, you can just head to the YouTube channel. And here's our overview for today. So first we're going to cover announcements, then we're going to do a warm-up, and then we're going to do demos and talk about lists, advanced lists and dictionaries, and then we're going to end off with the lecture engagement. So starting off with announcements, there's a reminder that you have your homework 3 due this Wednesday on the 24th. And then homework 4 was also released today, so you can get started on that if you'd like. And it's going to be due next Wednesday on October 1st. Okay, so let's start off with the warm-up. If you have a piece of paper, you can use it. Otherwise, you can just talk to the person next to you about these 3 questions. So the first one is write a function that returns true if n is less than 10 or greater than 100 and otherwise returns false. The second one is write a function with a for loop to calculate the sum of squares for all numbers from 1 to n. And then the last one is write a function with a while loop that multiplies a given number by 2 until it reaches 1,000. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to discuss or write on a piece of paper. Okay, that's enough time, I think. Before we show you the answers, we'd like to hear a little bit from you all about what you think about the different questions. So for question 1, does anyone have any ideas of how to approach it? Any thoughts about what you'd start off by doing? Okay, does anyone have any thoughts for question 2 or question 3? Okay, we can just show the answers then. Okay, for question 1, you just define your function with an input n, and then have it return n is less than 10 or n is greater than 100. Does anyone have any questions about that one? Okay, and then for question 2, again, define a function with an input n, and then have it go through the range I to n plus 1. And does anyone remember why you need to specify n plus 1 for the second input for the range? It's just that it's not, the ending index is not inclusive. So if you wanted to end at n, you have to have n plus 1 as your last input. And does anyone have any questions about that one? Okay, and then this is the last one to multiply until you get to 1,000. Any questions? All right, in that case, we'll just get started with our demo for lists.
Okay, so shall I just start with the demo? Okay.
Start.
Okay, so a list is like exactly what it sounds like, right? You're just string together like a bunch of different variables into like one single variable, right? So you are, we can make a list. Well, okay, I'll just show you first. We can make a list with, that's just full of integers, right? So I'm going to call my list numbers, and then we're going to use our square brackets when we're making a list. So now I can put whatever I want inside this list, and I'm going to put multiple different integers, and they're all going to be assigned to this like variable numbers, which is a list. So I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I can put whatever I want. So I'll just put a bunch of fives. Okay, so we use square brackets for making our lists. So now I'm going to print this out, and we can see numbers. Mhm. Okay, so now you can see it printed out my list here. Um, that's exactly what I assigned to that variable numbers. So we can put any variable type in a list. It doesn't have to be just integers. So this is what we used last class. We made a list called fruits, and we're going to put strings in this list. And we're going to put different types of fruits. So we're going to put apple, banana, and cherry. Close our square brackets, and then let's put this list. Fruits. Oh my God. Okay. So good. Now we printed out both of our lists, right? As you can see, we can make lists of numbers, lists of strings, and we can make it doesn't have to all be the same type of variable, right? So if I make a list called mixed, I can put like whatever types of variables I want in here. So I'm going to put a string. I'm going to put an integer. Yes.
You like zoom in.
Oh, yes. Sorry, wait. Can I just, is that too much? Can you guys see that? Fine. Okay. Okay, so I have my different types of lists. This is my mixed list. So I'm making a list of a bunch of different types of variables. Oh,
Python. Exit Python.
what?
Push.
Oh, sorry. Okay, perfect. Printed out my list. Okay. So now we're going to see how we can access different like elements in this list. So what if we had a list and we wanted to um just like see what was like our third number in that list? So in that case, I guess I'll just keep this. Okay. So I want to be able to get the Okay, well, actually, let's see what happens. What do you think is going to happen when I print numbers 1 here? So when I print this out, which number am I going to get? 2, right? So let's check. Yeah, so I got 2, right? Because if I wanted the first number, I would have to start at 0, right? Remember Python will always start at 0 here. So if I want the first element in my list, I have to index 0. Okay, let's see if I print fruits 2. All right, what fruit will be printed out here? Let's see. Nice, yeah, cherry. Okay. Um, we can also index with a negative number. So what do you guys think will happen if I print this? The index -1 of fruits. Okay. I heard an idea. Yes. So as you can see, I can get cherry two ways, right? I can get it from indexing from 0 or from the end. And so in that case, -1 would be the last element in my list. Okay, nice. Okay, and then I can also change items in a list, right? By if I wanted to say change the third element in my list to something else, then this is how I would do that. Let's see. So we're gonna print fruits. So this is our original list, right? Our apple, banana, cherry. And then I'm gonna change the first element of my list. I'm gonna change apple to grape. So I'm gonna have fruits. And right, we have to put the index as 0 if we want our first element. We want to change that to grape. And then let's print fruits again. All right, so now we have my original list. That's apple, banana, cherry. And then after I change the first element of my list to grape, as you can see, we have grape instead of apple. All right. Yeah, let's do a pen. Okay, so then if we want to add things to my list, so what if I had a list of values and then there was just something else I just wanted to add at the end? We would use append. So let's go back to our numbers list, our list of numbers. So let's print numbers. And then we're going to use append here. So I'm going to say numbers dot append. And I'm going to append 6 to my list. So now this is just going to put 6 at the end of my list. So as you can see, we have our old list and then we have our new list after we appended the value 6, which is going to put it in that last place in the list. So if you want to add a value in your list, but you don't want it to be at the end necessarily, we're going to use insert. Okay, so let's do this with our mixed list. Print mixed. And then we're going to insert. We use dot insert here, and then we put the index that we want it to be inserted into. So I'm going to say 1. We're going to insert it at index 1, and then we'll put false. All right, let's see what that does. So as you can see here, my list originally was hello, 5, true, none, and now we've added false so that it's the second element in the list, right, at index 1. Any questions about insert or append or anything else? Okay. So we've talked about how we can add things to our lists. Let's talk about how we can remove things. So we're going to print fruits. Right now, my fruits should be grape, banana, cherry. So I want to remove banana. So we just say remove, right? We use remove, and then we can just put in the value that we want to remove. So I'm just going to say banana. So it's going to look through my list. It's going to find where banana is. It's going to take banana out. All right, nice. So we have apple, banana, cherry, and now we just have apple, cherry. Our banana is gone. Okay. And then the other way we can remove items is by the index. So say we don't exactly know what fruit is at the first index, right? But we just know we want to get rid of it. So fruits, this is going to be apple, banana, cherry. And then we're going to say fruits dot. And I'm going to remove apple, right? I'm going to remove the first element. All right. So as you can see, that just removed the first element. So our two different ways to remove are by giving the actual element that we want to remove, right? Either the banana or the number or whatever it is, if we know what we want to remove, or we can do it by index, right? If we know where in the list the value is that we want to remove. All right, so far we've gone through how we can change items in a list, how we can add things, right? Either append or insert, and then the two different ways we can remove. Any questions so far? Yes. Oh, this is just how we can remove. It's just like the syntax for removing something from your list by the index. So this fruits.pop is the same thing as our remove up here. If I said fruits dot remove and then I wanted to remove apple. So same thing, right? It did the same thing this time, but we just used the index instead of like writing in the value that we want to remove. Any other questions? Okay. Okay. And then we can always use a for loop to loop through a list. In this case, I just want to be able to print out all the fruits in my list. So I'm going to say for fruit in fruits, print fruit. So we talked about for loops last week. So this for loop is just saying for every element that's in my list fruits, it's going to go through, it's going to print out that element, and it's going to go through the entire list to do that. So, and you can see that, right, it printed it out a little bit differently than we have before, right? When I just printed out the entire list, it gave it to me in the square brackets. But if I go through in a for loop and I print it out, it's going through element by element and printing out what that is. So we have them on different lines like this: apple, banana, and cherry. Okay. Any questions? Okay, we're gonna do a practice question. So yeah, you can just chat amongst yourselves or write it down, how you would do the following things if you just made a list of colors. Okay, you guys can talk about it. Okay, let's go over them. So let's make our list. Can I get some colors? First color. Nice. Second color. I heard green. Oh, okay. And we can do turquoise. Did I spell that? That looks right. Okay. How am I going to get the second color in my list? Yes. Yes. Nice. Great. Green. All right. How am I going to get turquoise using negative indexing? Yes. Yay. All right. I want to add yellow to the end of my list. How am I going to do that? Yeah. Nice. Print colors. Perfect. All right. And then how am I going to go through and print out every single color in my list? Yeah? Nice. Perfect. All right. Nice work, everyone. Do we have any questions about these practice problems? I think we got it. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. Let's talk about list slicing. Okay, so what we mean when we say we're gonna slice a list is just grabbing one like chunk of that list from a start value to a stop value, right? So if I only want a portion of my list, I'm gonna use slicing. So let's do a demo. Okay. So I'm gonna make a list of numbers. 10, 20, 30. Okay. So here's my list. So what if I want to only print from 20 to 40? Let's see. So how I would do that is print nums, and then using my square brackets, I would go from the index that I want my chunk to start at to where I want to end. So if I go from 1 to 4, let's see what happens. So it gives me 20, 30, 40. So it's going to start at index 1, which is the second one, right? Which is going to be 20. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But 4 is the like end of the last index is exclusive. So it's not going to include the 50. If I wanted to include 50, what would I change this to? 5. Nice. So now it's going to give me 50. Okay, so just remember that our last index is exclusive. It's not going to include the upper range that you give it. Okay, so we have some shortcuts. Um, if we knew that we wanted just the first, or let's see what happens. Okay, so if we know that we just want from the beginning to a certain index, then we can use a colon here, and that's gonna mean that we're gonna like start and we're gonna go until index 3. Right? So we started at 10 and then we went 0, 1, 2, 3. 3 is 40, but it doesn't include 40, remember. And then it goes the other way also. We can do print nums and say we want to start at index 3 and we want to go to the end. All right, so we started at index 3, which is 40, and then we went all the way through the rest of the list. And then if we just want the entire list, we can just we can just print it. But if we just put a colon like this, then it will print the entire list. Any questions about slicing? Just remember that our last index is non-inclusive. It's exclusive. Okay. And then the other thing that we're going to talk about is striding. So striding is another way to just get certain values from our list, but we can do it like we don't have to get every single value. We can go like every other value or yeah, just fun tricks like that. So let's make another list. My nums equal 16. Okay, this is my new list. Perfect. All right. So I want a way to be able to get every other number in my list. Okay. So the way I'm going to do that is print my nums. So I'm going to put 2 colons and a 2 here, and I'll explain that in just a second. So now it started at the first element, index 0, and it grabbed every other element from there. So it went 20, grab 20, skip 40, and then print 60, skip 80, and then 100, skip 120. So I have 2 colons here as I'm using my shortcut method to get, because that means that I want it to do this throughout the entire list. So for the whole list, it's going to grab every other number. If I wanted to, say I wanted to get, I wanted to do this, but I want to start at the second element. So I want to get 40, 80, 120. I can do that by starting at 1. So I go here, I'd go 1, colon, which means I'm going to start at 1, and then I'm going to go through the entire list. Another colon, and then 2. And that means that I'm going to be getting every other element. So now I can get the ones that I didn't grab before. I can grab 40, 80, and 120. Any questions? Let's go through this. All right, yeah. So what this is saying is that the start index is inclusive, the end index is exclusive when we're slicing, and then when we're striding, yeah, that's exactly what we just did. Okay, let's do a practice. All right, you guys can chat amongst yourselves or write on a piece of paper. How would you do the following with this list of letters? Okay, let's go over this. So letters equals A. E. Okay. All right. The first thing we want is to get the letters from B to E. How are we going to do that? What index am I going to start at? 1, right? We want to start at B. What index am I going to end at? 5. Okay, I see a 5. Let's see. Nice. Right? We went from index 1, which is the second element in our list, to index 5, but we're not including index 5, right? All right. Any questions? That one's pretty good. All right, now I want to get every other letter. How am I going to do that? Yeah, nice. So I'm going to be using striding. So the colon here, the first colon is to say that I want to go through the entire list. I'm going to put another colon and then 2 because that is like my step length. So yeah, that's my step length as I go through my list. Nice, and I get every other letter. All right. How about reversing the list? Any ideas on how to do that? Yeah.
Call the dot reverse function.
Okay. What about using striding? Yeah. Yeah. So there's always multiple ways to solve your problem. So you can definitely find um a function or a way that's already set up to do it, but this way we're saying that our step length is -1. So that means we're going through and we're grabbing every letter in reverse. So let's see. Nice, yeah. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. And then our last thing is to just get the last 3 letters. How am I going to do that? Any ideas? I want to use negative indexing here. What am I going to put as my start index? Yeah, do you have an idea? Exactly, yeah. So I'm gonna start at index -3, and then I'm going to go through the rest of the list from there. So nice. All right, and I've got the last 3 letters. So the other way to do this, right? I could have like counted through my indices and seen where like E was, right? So that would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I could have started from 4, but if my list is really long and I don't want to count from the beginning, right? It's much easier sometimes to just start from the -3rd index, would just be the third to last. Okay, does anyone have any questions about these practice problems or slicing, striding, lists in general? You feeling pretty good? Okay, I will turn it over then, and we're going to talk about dictionaries.
Okay, so moving on to dictionaries. First, we're just going to talk about how the syntax for actually making a dictionary, and just a little bit about what they are. Basically, a dictionary is a way of storing your data with a key and then a value that's assigned to that key. So the way that you're going to make a dictionary is first you're just going to call it whatever you want. So for example, if we wanted to make a dictionary with a student and some facts about the student, you would do the equal sign, and then to start your dictionary, you're going to do one of these curly brackets. And then within the curly brackets, you're going to define your key value pairs. So your keys are going to be within strings, and then you're just going to call it whatever you want. So if we want one of the key value pairs to have the name of the student, we would define the key to be name, and then you would do a colon, and then the name of your student. So let's say her name was Ariana. We would do that. And then each of your key value pairs need to be separated by a comma. So we'd do comma, and then your next key value pair. So let's say you wanted to do the year of the student, you would define your key, and then you would assign the value to this key, which in our case would be 4, and then again another comma. And then let's say we wanted to define the major, we could do major, and then colon, computer science, for example. Does anyone have any questions about the syntax of making a dictionary? It's pretty clear. And then if we wanted to just print, let me just make sure that we comment out the rest. It just prints out what your dictionary is. So that's kind of how you make a dictionary. Now we're going to talk about different things that you can, yeah.
Does each line have to be separated?
No, you could do it all in one line if you want, as long as they're separated by commas, but this is just a better way of kind of seeing it, but you don't have to do that. Any other questions? Okay, so let's say you wanted to access a value in your dictionary. So let's say you have your dictionary and you want to figure out my student, what is their year? What you're going to do is you're going to do print student, and then you're just going to put the key that you want the value of. So in our case, we're going to print their year. And it'll return 4, which is good because that's what we assigned as the value for that key. And again, you can do this for any of the keys. And then another thing that you can do with dictionaries is you can change the value of a specific key. And the way that you're going to do that is you're just going to call the, kind of like what we were doing before. This basically represents the value. So you're just going to change the value of that key. So in our case, if we want to change it to 5 instead of 4, we just do student year is equal to 5 instead. And now if we print student, no, student and then year, it should tell us 5 instead of 4, and that is what it does. Any questions about that? Okay, another thing that you can do is if you already made your dictionary and you want to add a new pair to your dictionary, you can do that. So let's say you wanted to also include in your dictionary now what school the student goes to. So you can just write the name of your dictionary and then define a new key. So we're going to call our key school, and then we're just going to put the value of that key as UC Berkeley. And now if we print student, it will include a new key value pair right over here. Student school is equal to UC Berkeley. You can also see if we printed it beforehand, although we already changed it, so can't do that anymore. But if you had printed it before you changed it, it would have not had the school UC Berkeley key value pair in it. Another thing you can do is if you want to delete a key value pair from your dictionary, you can do that. And the way you're going to do that is just DEL, just delete, and then whatever key value pair you want to delete. So if we wanted to delete the key value pair that we just added with school UC Berkeley, we would just do student, school, and then to see what our new dictionary looks like, we can just do print students. And as you can see, it's no longer in our dictionary. Okay, and then another thing that you can do is you can extract the keys from the dictionary. And the way that you're going to do that is just print. And obviously you don't have to do the print, but that's just to show us what we're going to be doing. You can do print and then student dot keys, and that's just going to print out only the keys in the dictionary. So if you remember, we had name, year, major, and that is what it prints out. And similarly to that, you can also print out the values associated with these keys. So the way you're going to do that, can anyone take a guess what the syntax is going to be? Yeah, it's just going to be the same exact thing, but instead of keys, you're going to do values. And when you do that, it's going to print out the values that were in assigned to each of those keys. And then the last thing thing to know about dictionaries is you can also have it give you all the pairs. So it'll include both the key and the value. And the way that you're going to do that is through student.items. And when you print that out, it's going to give you each of the key value pairs in a tuple. Okay, so that's kind of the general things to know about dictionaries. We can apply what we learned about for loops a couple weeks ago to dictionaries, and have it print, what's it called? Print the key for the student. So if you wanted to make a for loop that went through each of the keys and printed it out, how would you do that? How would you start that off? Looping through the dictionary. Just start off the for loop with for, and then remember you can do any word for this. This is just going to iterate through whatever object you're going to tell it to. So in our case, we want to iterate through the student dictionary, and we want it to print the key. We want it to print the key, and then we want it to print what's in the key. So to do this, we can use something called an F string. Does anyone know what that is? Have you guys heard of that before? Basically, it's a way to print something while also referencing something that you defined previously in your file. So in our case, we wanted to print whatever our key was, and we don't know what it is, but we just wanted to iterate through and print whatever it is. So you're going to put that in curly brackets within the F string, which you're just going to write. The syntax for that is just F and then the quotation marks. And then you're going to do key, and then that's just going to print whatever the key is that it's iterating through in that iteration, and then equals, and then another curly bracket because we want to reference something else in our file, and now we want it to print the value. And if we do that, it prints each of the keys is equal to, or just like an equal sign, that's just a string, and then the value that we assign to it. Does anyone have any questions about that? All right, let me just comment all of that out. Okay, there's also another way that you can do that. When you're using for loops, you can iterate through both the keys and the values. So the way that you're going to do that is you're going to tell it for key, comma, value. So it's going to go through both. And this time, instead of doing for key and student, so when you do for key and student, it's going to iterate through each of the pairs. But in this case, we want it to iterate through each of the items. So we're going to do student dot items, and that's going to basically signal to it that you want it to go through the key and value for each of the pairs. And then, of course, the colon. And then let's say we want to do the same exact thing that we just did, but now we're specifying what our value is in the for loop. What do you think you're going to put in your print statement? Any thoughts? The beginning is going to look the exact same because we're defining the key as well. But this time, instead of doing student and then key, we can just tell it to do value because we already defined what that is. So when you print that, it's going to do the same exact thing that the previous method did. So there's just a lot of different ways of doing the same thing, and this is one of them. So that's kind of the overview of some of the things you can do with dictionaries and different ways of accessing the items. Are there any questions about dictionaries or syntax or anything like that? All right. In that case, we're going to move on to some dictionaries practice. So here's your practice question on a piece of paper or with people next to you. Do the following with this dictionary: access and print the pet's name, change the age to 4, add a new key value, favorite toy string, and then print all the key value pairs with a loop. And try doing that in different ways. And I'll give you guys a couple minutes for that. All right, hopefully that was enough time for you guys to discuss that one. Does anyone, let's actually start on it. So first we're gonna have to actually make our dictionary. Can someone tell me what the syntax is? How do I start writing out my dictionary in Python? First we define the name, and then what symbol are we gonna use to start our dictionary? Exactly. And then we had already had name is equal, or the colons, and then Luna. And then we had type cat. And then we had the age of the cat as 3. And just to make sure that we did that all right, we can print pet, and it should give us our dictionary. All right. The first thing that we wanted to do was access and print the name of the pet. So how would I do that? Yeah. Yeah. And remember the brackets, and then you would do name, and that will print out Luna. Great job. The next one was we want to change the name from, or sorry, change the age from 3 to 4. How would you do that? I'll start it off for us. What would I do after that? Yeah. Yeah. So you do equal sign and then 4. And now if you print print pet and then age, it'll tell us 4. All right, the next thing we wanted to do is we want to add a new key value pair. We want to add that Luna's favorite toy is a string. How would we do that? Does anyone remember? Okay, you're just going to, in quotation marks within your square brackets, define the name of your new key, which in our case we wanted it to be favorite toy, and then assign the value, which in our case is string, and we should see when we print out our dictionary that we have a new key value pair, and there it is. Any questions on that? Okay, the last thing we wanted to do is we want to go through our dictionary. We want to loop through it, and we want it to print each of the key value pairs, which is exactly what we did a couple minutes ago. So can anyone remind me, how do we do that with a for loop? What's the first line? There are 2 different ways of doing it, but what's the quicker way? Yeah.
For key value.
Yeah. So you do for key values in pet.items. And then we would print out, and we would utilize an F string and have it print key. And then we can do, before we did an equals, we can do a colon. You can do whatever you want within that string. And then the next thing we want it to print is the value that we are iterating through. Oh, and you have to make sure that that's spelled the same way. And then when we do that, it's going to loop through our dictionary and print out each of the keys with each of the values associated with it. Does that all make sense? Okay. In that case, these are the answers to the questions that we just discussed. That is all the content for today's lecture. So make sure to do the lecture engagement and yeah, submit